Ready for a deep dive into the Niger Delta.
Sounds fascinating.
Today we're using a fictional thriller, Delta Extraction, Race Against Ransom, to uncover some hard truths about oil, power, and resistance.
Yeah, it's amazing how fiction can hold a mirror up to reality, isn't it?
Absolutely. Right from the start, the novel paints this vivid picture. Think lush mangroves, winding waterways.
Beautiful.
It is, but then always looming. Oil rigs, that sheen of pollution.
It reminds me of those documentaries on oil spills, the devastating impact they have on ecosystems.
Exactly. It makes you think of the human cost, too. The novel introduces us to Pa Okan. He says, "This oil don't take everything from us." Heartbreaking.
It is, and unfortunately, it echoes the experiences of communities grappling with extractive industries worldwide. It's a pattern: environmental damage, lost livelihoods, and then rising social unrest.
It's like the novel's showing us the human face of a global issue. And the environmental damage is bad enough, but then it dives into corruption, too. We meet this powerful official, Chief Festus. He's playing both sides. Does that sound familiar in the real world?
Oh, absolutely. Chief Festus, he embodies the complexities of corruption in resource-rich areas, facilitating deals, ignoring environmental violations, all to profit at the expense of his own people.
It's a stark reminder that profit often overshadows ethics. And speaking of global players, the novel brings in China. Chinese engineers working for the CNPC, blueprints hinting at a bigger agenda. What do you make of that?
Well, it highlights those geopolitical dynamics at play, right?
Yep.
China's demand for oil and gas has fueled investment in these regions, leading to this, well, complex interplay of economic and political influence.
A recipe for exploitation, you might say.
Potentially, yes.
So we've got exploitation, corruption, international intrigue. And then we meet Amaka, our protagonist. She's brilliant, educated, but deeply connected to her Delta roots, like a bridge between these worlds.
She embodies that internal conflict many face, balancing opportunity with preserving heritage and identity. It makes you wonder, can ambition coexist with responsibility to your community, to the environment?
It's a question we all face, I think. But she's not alone. The novel introduces these activists at Aobi and Uzo, risking everything to expose the truth about the environmental damage and the corruption. They remind me of real-life whistleblowers, environmental defenders facing huge risks.
Absolutely. Their courage resonates with the global movement demanding accountability from corporations, governments. The novel really highlights those risks that come with challenging the powerful.
Inspiring, but also pretty sobering.
Yeah.
And then there's Emika's family. Her father, Samuel, a fisherman, struggling.
Her mother, Nkechi, health problems, probably from the polluted water.
And Chinedu, her brother, an activist driven by anger, wanting justice. It makes it all so personal, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Their struggles really show the human cost hidden behind the statistics, the headlines. It's a reminder that behind every barrel of oil, there are lives impacted, families trying to cope with the consequences.
Adds a whole other dimension, doesn't it? And then things get really tense. Li Chang, a Chinese engineer working in the Delta, gets abducted. What does this tell us about the region?
Well, it highlights the dangers faced by foreign workers in places like this. Politically unstable, resource-rich. Makes you think, how do we balance economic interests with the safety of individuals?
Right. And you mentioned the SBS, this elite unit Amika gets recruited by for the rescue. Can you explain that to our listener? Who are they? Why are they involved?
The SBS, or Special Boat Service, they're a special forces unit known for maritime counterterrorism, hostage rescue, things like that. Their involvement, it suggests a high level of risk. Maybe this kidnapping is bigger than it seems.
So not just a local issue anymore. This is getting interesting.
Oh, it is. As Amika and this SBS team go deeper into the Delta, they find a blueprint that points to a much bigger conspiracy than anyone imagined. And that's where things really start to get fascinating.
Now you got me hooked. We're back diving deeper into Delta extraction. Before we left off, you mentioned a blueprint hinting at a much larger conspiracy.
Oh.
What can you tell us without giving it all away?
Well, this blueprint, it's like a key, right? Unlocking this whole other level points to a really calculated plot, maybe with much bigger consequences. Amika and the SBS team, they have to rethink everything.
So not just a hostage rescue now, it's global. I'm thinking about those real-life stories, corporate espionage, what people do for power and profit.
Yeah, it's like a classic thriller idea, but in the context of Delta extraction, it takes on this whole other meaning. We're reminded how the pursuit of resources can blur the lines. What's legal, what's ethical, it gets murky.
And dangerous, I bet.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, the novel introduces this character, Amina, mysterious past, and you hinted at her being connected to this conspiracy. What's her story?
Amina, she adds this layer of betrayal, moral ambiguity. Turns out her family, they've got a history in the Delta too. Exploitation, loss. It adds this whole emotional depth to the conspiracy, this generational trauma.
Wow. A reminder that these global power struggles, they impact real people. Families change by decisions made far away.
Exactly. And as the team digs deeper, they find this device, this piece of technology, way more advanced than they expected.
Ooh, now we're talking high tech. What is it? What does it do?
It never actually says what it is, but it's clearly powerful, points to a network operating beyond the Delta, pulling strings globally. It makes you think about surveillance technology in the real world, right? That fear of misuse.
Yeah, a little too close to home. So how do they even begin to handle this?
The investigation, it explodes outwards. Lagos, Beijing, even London and Paris. A global chase for answers.
They're going up against some serious power then. Do they stand a chance?
They're facing threats, betrayal, even from their own people. Trust is a luxury they don't have. One wrong move.
High stakes. The novel also mentions a CIA operative, Agent Emily Parker. What's her role? Is she an ally?
She's an ally, but can they
No.
really trust her? She represents that world of intelligence, agendas, shifting loyalties.
It's wild how the novel mixes all these things: betrayal, espionage, geopolitics, and yet it feels so plausible.
Right. And just when you think you've got it figured out, there's another twist. Another betrayal, a harrowing escape. Shows how dangerous it all is.
Keeping us on the edge of our seats.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the blueprint, the device, betrayals everywhere. What's the conspiracy about? What are they after?
That's the big question, right? And the answer is pretty shocking. They uncover this plan, so audacious, so morally wrong, they have to question everything. Do they expose it no matter the cost? Or find another way?
Those are some heavy choices when the stakes are so high.
Yeah, and Delta Extraction doesn't make it easy. The climax, it's suspenseful, forces us to confront these complex questions of morality. The lines get blurry, even when you're fighting for what's right. But before we get into all that,
We've been on quite a ride with Delta Extraction, haven't we?
we have from the Niger Delta itself to this huge conspiracy.
It's really made us think.
It has. We started with a fictional thriller, but we're really talking about real-world power dynamics.
Exactly. And now, as we wrap up our own deep dive, it's time to think about what we've learned.
And what it means for us, right?
Right. So, listener, imagine you're Amika for a second.
Faced with this impossible decision.
Expose the truth. Risk the consequences.
Or find another way.
What would you do? It's a question we all face, in a way.
It is. Do you prioritize the so-called greater good, even if it means chaos?
Or try to find a better way. It's tough.
It really is. And Delta Extraction, it doesn't give any easy answers.
No, it doesn't. If anything, it reminds us there are rarely easy solutions.
Exactly. The world is messy.
It makes you think about the choices we all make, though.
And the impact those choices have.
But even with all the uncertainty, the book offers a glimmer of hope, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. That human resilience.
People making a difference, even when the odds are stacked against them.
Amika's story and those like her fighting for their communities, it's inspiring.
It is. Gives you hope that change is possible.
It might be a long road.
But one worth fighting for.
Def.
So, as we finish our deep dive into Delta Extraction, it makes you wonder, what about our own world?
What are the hidden truths out there?
The systems of power we need to be aware of.
How can we, like those in the book, help create a better future?
It's a lot to think about. But remember, every voice matters.
Every action has an impact.
So until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, keep diving deep.